Hi to all the Prêt-à-Template users. In this video, let's explore some new patterns family with embroidery patterns that has arrived. And let's create a male runway model with a look that's going to have something to do with these patterns. At first, I opened this puzzle look and just select different features one by one that will fit the look that I'm trying to create. And if I have in mind a piece that is somewhat a different design that isn't presented within the templates, what I do is I still try to find something that will be not literally but close enough in terms of silhouette so that I can still use it to make my drawing easier. So I'm going to pick the pieces that I feel are the most suitable right now. And now that I'm happy with everything, I'm ready to start drawing. Take a look at this icon with pencil. You just tap it and it takes you to the drawing canvas. You can also go back the same way. I will start drawing on the first layer and I'm going to manipulate these toggles to have enough opacity for my templates, each one separately. I will probably keep them at this about 20% each. And I'll pick a pencil with a black color. I also selected a small size. And I will start my sketch, starting with the face. I'm going to start sketching, and the technique that I want to utilize is using a different tilt of the pencil. So when I'm holding the pencil straight, I'm going to have more of a straight, strong line, and then while tilting the pencil, I'm going to have this softer kind of broad shadow. It's really easy to sketch just following the template, so I'm not really worried about anything, the placement of features. I'm just simply repeating the outlines. I'm following the same shapes of eyes and everything, which is simple, but of course there's always a possibility to just use template as a starting point and change things around. But I'm going to stick to a rather close reproduction. So I'm not exactly sure how much of a completion I want to the figure. And at this point, I just want to start sketching the pieces, the different garments. The first one is going to be a shirt with a rather relaxed silhouette. So I won't be following the template precisely. You can see the original outline. I'm going to interpret it in a different way, but it's much easier to have it still there, to have it like as a guide. And the same applies for trousers. I'm following kind of closely the template, but still adding the parts where I feel that I want some changes, and I'm going to outline the shoes to complete. And I'm adding hands drawing. Of course, it's easier to see template at this point a little bit better. Now I can remove it and see how the drawing looks without the template. And I will add a layer and I will drag it underneath the drawing. I must be sure that I always see the drawing no matter what I'm coloring. It's not going to get covered. So I will start with a watercolor brush and just pick a skin tone. And just indicate it somewhat very gently. And I know that I need it on the body because the type of shirt that I want to draw is going to have some level of transparency to it. Therefore, I'm going to need to show the body underneath. That's it. So I actually didn't even draw the body, I just used the template to see where it will be. And here's how it looks to begin with. And I want to plan the shirt drawing. So let's get to the exciting part to see the new patterns family. I'm adding one more layer to swatch them. And let's reduce the opacity over here and check in the library. All the new patterns are appearing at the bottom. So this is the new ones. These are 5 different types. I'll pick a color. I think it won't be too visible, so I'm just going to make it darker. This is the first one. I'm trying to imagine which one I'm going to use for the design. I really love this one. And this is the 5th. So I realized that there is a necessity for me to darken the body color because I want the shirt to be light. So if I'm going to place this ornament on top of a really light color, I won't be able to see it. And I'm going to add one more layer on top of the skin to actually add some shadows. I'm using a marker with a darker color, and I will just I'll just paint across the shadow areas to add a darker parts, which hopefully will be visible under the shirt too. And to reduce the contrast between these two light and dark colors, I'm going to add some wash with a watercolor brush to merge it slightly. So now I can start using a new layer to add the pattern. I will again search for the one that I want to use. If you tap and hold on this small icons, you'll get a preview. This is the one I want, and I will draw it across the entire area of the shirt. Since I'm not using a dark background and I'm drawing against the white, and the pattern that I'm using is also in the light color as I selected, it's not that visible. So there's 2 ways to do this. First, if you want it to really stand out, you can use a darker background. But for me, I'm going to just first apply it as is, and then usually what I do to reinforce certain lines or drawing, I'm just going to duplicate the layer, which makes it kind of more bold in a way, so I'll show in a minute. Once I'm done with this area, I'm tapping this double sheet icon, and then I'm merging it with this arrow down icon. So I've done this 3-4 times, and each time I'm getting a bolder result, and the pattern stands out more because the lines of it become kind of thicker. So once I'm happy with this, I will start filling in certain areas, because I want the fabric to be like transparent in some areas, and I want it to be non-transparent in the other areas. So I'm just looking for how to work, how can I create this illusion using this pattern. And I will experiment with few areas. Another note is that you can see some of the areas where I put the pattern not against the body. You almost can't see it, and it's good. I like it that way because that's how it is in reality. The pattern will become more obvious over certain areas and kind of disappear from the view. So that actually adds realism. So I've decided that I'm going to fill in these parts of the ornament and treat the dashed line as the embroidery that you can see through. And get the result that I'm looking for. Here's how it looks. I'm only going to add the light line on the collar to make it look more finished. And this is a stage where I want to leave it as of now and move on to the pants. I'm going to add one more layer. And I will take a color which I want, using a solid tool. It's going to have an opaque finish. I'm starting with a small size to draw around the hand, and then I will switch to a larger size to be comfortable filling in quickly the entire area of the trousers. And the pattern of the shirt stays on the layer on top, so that I'm not covering it. I'll move it one layer down to be able to see my drawing and the borders which I need to fill it in. Now I'm adding one more layer to add shadows to the trousers. I will use a color slightly darker, and I'm using a watercolor brush in the smallest size to be able to control the area that I'm covering. I don't want it to be too broad, just the shadows in the places where the fabric meets and in the folds. So I'm trying to consciously think of how the material behaves and how the folds look like and where the shadows will be formed. as I'm not using a precise reference for this one, I have to use my imagination and follow these lines that I have created with pencil. And I don't want strong edges as well, because I want the material to look smooth and flowy. So that is another aspect that I keep in mind. And I'm leaving trousers at that. I just want to color the shoes and give everything the initial stage of finish. I'm using a marker with one of the related colors from this palette just to fill it in, and then I'll use a simple shadow and light areas to give it some basic kind of coloring. So at this point, the illustration is semi-finished. As a quick sketch, it could be left, but I want to push it a little further and start in the same sequence like before, from top to bottom. I'm adding one more layer to see if I can define the features of the face slightly in order to not overwork it and keep the fresh feeling of the illustration, to make it look like something that's been done relatively quick. So I will try to add a couple more lines and make the face features a bit more defined. And I will use a black pencil to just work over them. Once again, I'm just now quickly cleaning some areas that I felt I lost the light on, and with black pencil I'm gonna be able to define the lines once again. As I'm moving to the shirt, I will reinforce some of the outlines of my original drawing and apply another approach. I'm holding my pencil almost flat horizontally to the surface of the iPad, and I'm using a really light touch, which allows me to have this diffused broad shadow without a strong line. And that is kind of an analog of hatching, cross hatching, but in a really fast and simple way. So I'm holding it really low and just kind of hatching it. It's really nice way to add shadows really quick. The most important way is the angle that you tilt the eye pencil to achieve this effect. It may take some practice, but you really get used to it fast. And the diversity in the line work that you get is amazing, which makes the illustration much more realistic. So I'm adding that on the borders where the body is curving, right? And you can kind of draw the body underneath the shirt without seeing the really strong edge of it. So that adds a realistic touch, and I will apply this all over the shirt and all over the trousers too. And one important note, I'm using this on top of my pattern which I've applied earlier. Why? Because if I will do it under the pattern, the entire coloring of my pattern is going to remain flat, 2D, because the color I applied was flat. But once I'm hatching on top of it, I'm making some of it darker and some of it lighter, which creates this beautiful folds and this play of light and shadow. and that is adding the realistic touch to the illustration. So this pretty much wraps up the process of this illustration, and I really hope you liked watching it and learned something new. Please give this video a like and subscribe to see reviews of the new features on the app, any updates, and more tutorials like this. Thank you for watching.